and it comes in the form of Game 5 World Series. We got a big win, a statement win, a butt whooping as the Toronto Blue Jays went in and said, I don't really care. I don't care if this is LA. I don't care if this is the Dodgers. The Blue Jays went in and absolutely whoop up on the Dodgers 6-1. Savage, who I said on this show yesterday, for anyone that hadn't been paying attention, in his entire career as a Major League Baseball pitcher, which has been about 3 seconds long, had only pitched 4 road innings in his entire career in an MLB road stadium. And last night, he went in and he dominated in World Series Game 5.
It was such a thrilling performance. And we saw Trey Savage do that in the ALCS against the Seattle Mariners. But in his first work in the World Series, it wasn't his best. He gave up 4 hits and 2 runs and 4 innings of work. So it was redemption last night. It was redemption in the best fashion. I mean, Trey Savage made that Dodgers lineup look was one of the lowest payrolls in all of Major League Baseball. I mean, look last night. Shohei Ohtani, 0 for 4. Mookie Betts, 0 for 4. And Mookie Betts has really largely, for the entirety of this World Series, been a non-factor, to the point that Dave Rogers, the manager for the LA Dodgers, has had to shake up the lineup a little bit. Freddie Freeman, 0 for 3. Tommy Edman, 0 for 3. And Tommy Edman has stepped up to the plate, no pun intended, in October's past. Max Muncy, 0 for 3. And the Dodgers only had 4 hits. 4 hits? I mean, look, all credit in the world to Trey Savage, but he is still a rookie. And that rookie made the Dodgers look like they were a bunch of rookies. I mean, the Dodgers just didn't have any answer for what Trey Savage was giving them. And it was so electric to watch, Fitzy. And I really feel like, my reaction to Game 5, and really maybe even this series in its entirety. Yes, it's been incredibly back and forth. Yes, we had the 18-inning thriller just a couple of days ago. But so far, and specifically last night, we are seeing the Toronto Blue Jays play like how everyone expected the Dodgers to play. I mean, everyone was talking about, is this going to be a gentleman's sweep? Are the Dodgers going to be nice and take it to 5 games? How quickly are the Dodgers going to be able to take care of the Toronto Blue Jays? The Blue Jays heard all of that talk and they said, we hear you and we are so much better than anyone could have anticipated. So much better than I think I and so many others gave the Blue Jays credit for. It's on the mound. It's at the plate. The Blue Jays have looked like the better team for the better parts.
Yeah, and at some point, the Dodgers seem frustrated. Last night was one of the worst Dodger games I can remember. I mean, think about it. They had as many wild pitches in that game, 4, as they did hits, 4. They had the most wild pitches ever in a World Series game. And it just sort of was indicative of how the night went. What you saw on one end were the Blue Jays making incredible plays, especially defensively on the one Shohei hit, diving out, laying out, catching. The Blue Jays were making incredible defensive plays. And it felt like all night the Dodgers were just chasing. And if anything, I expected on a 3rd straight night in LA that there would be the opportunity for the Dodgers to really make a statement. I don't think you want to go into Toronto needing to win both of the games at the Rogers Center. Like, that's just not it's an unenviable position to be in. And if we're being real, if you look at the entire context of it, if we take the 18 innings was incredible. It was magnificent. But the reality of it is the Blue Jays won 2 out of 3 in LA. It's been wild since the end of that 18-inning game. It just feels like it's the Blue Jays that have been able to recalibrate, put that long game behind them, and continue to move forward. And since then, it feels like it's the Dodgers that just are out of sorts. They're out of whack. Shohei has looked human, which we talked about yesterday, and that's fine. But 2 days in a row, and now that becomes concerning because he really is the spark plug that's going to make everything go. Mookie Betts has just looked bad. I don't think there's a nice way to say that. Like, Mookie Betts has not played well at all throughout the course of this series. So you just look at this across the board, and what we've seen are stars come up small and everybody just chasing pitches they shouldn't chase while they're suddenly chasing their tail. There's just none of this has the calm that I would have expected from the Dodgers in this situation. And now their back's up against the wall. And it's easy for me to say, Caroline, no worries, they got it. They can win 2 in a row. I'm still stunned by what we saw last night. The team that lost last night certainly doesn't deserve a lot of benefit of the doubt for going to Toronto and being able to sweep 2 in a country where, as I said yesterday, 1/6 of the entire country watched the first 2 games of the World Series. Like, you are going into the biggest home field advantage you could imagine, and you just played like that in your own stadium? I don't feel good about this at all for the Dodgers.
I don't think you should. And really, if you look at that 18 inning, I don't want to play revisionist history and I don't want to take anything away from the Dodgers, but that really truly could have gone either way. I think that game was the perfect example of how evenly matched these teams are. So what the Blue Jays are doing is no fluke. If I want to say anything is a fluke, it was that 18 inning game. So it's inexplicable, really offensively, what we're seeing from the Dodgers. But I think that Dave Roberts is in a really difficult position. And what if we talk so much about the vulnerability about the Dodgers? It's their bullpen, it's their relief pitching. That, between Yamamoto and Blake Snell, who were fantastic in the LCS, that Dave Roberts almost has to keep in Shohei Ohtani, obviously. Don't want to forget about him. Dave Roberts is almost forced to keep them in probably longer than any other manager in sports would keep them in, because Dave Roberts doesn't want to go to the bullpen. In a close game or a game that feels like the Dodgers can still, Dave Roberts might have to exacerbate his starting pitching, because what are you going to do? Go to one of these guys that are unreliable and then all of a sudden, you'd rather, keep a guy in for too long than take him out too early and then have to continue to exhaust these guys that you just simply do not trust. So I think that's kind of where you're seeing the Blue Jays have the ability to run away with some of these games, because the Blue Jays were up 3-1 going into the 8th. I mean, this was still a game that the Dodgers still could have come back into. 3-1 going into the 8th. Anything can happen. It's October baseball. You're the LA Dodgers. You bets and Freddie Freeman and Shohei Ohtani. You should believe in your team offensively and what they can do. But late in that game, that's when when the Blue Jays totally just ran away with it. So although the Dodgers are getting great starting pitching, and Yamamoto will be on the mound in Game 6, that's a guy that I would trust maybe more than anybody in Major League. But when you don't trust your bullpen, it only makes your starting pitching worse in a way, because the guy is throwing 6 when he really should have gone 5, or he's throwing 7 when he really should have gone 6. So you're starting to see that, I think, come to fruition. And the way that this Toronto offense is humming, it took one pitch to hit one home run last night. I mean, before people even grabbed their popcorn, when people were still waiting in line to scan their tickets, Davis Schneider went yard, and then Vlad Guerrero Jr. followed right up with it. Before you could even blink, the Blue Jays were up 2-0. So I think those two things combined, the way that this Blue Jays is humming and the way that Dave Roberts really just cannot trust his pitching, and that's a recipe for success for the Blue Jays. But all of that being said, Fitz, I still think that there very much so is a path for this Dodgers team to come back.
I mean, as we see there, and as you just mentioned, the Blue Jays were up 2-0, 2 batters in, which means that Savage had all the run support he needed for the entire game in the first 2 batters. Like, that just speaks to what domination that this was. And you're right, there's still a path. But if we're being real, part of the way that we got to this conversation, remember about a week ago, was could the Dodgers have the most dominant postseason we've ever seen? And I think part of the reason we got to that expectation in that conversation was because the Dodgers stars were playing like superstars. Like, when your great players are playing like they are superhuman, all of a sudden you look absolutely indestructible. What we haven't seen from the Dodgers throughout the course of this series is, what do they do when those same people just look really good? Like, what do you do when those players aren't necessarily superhuman? Like, when you need a Herculean effort from your starting pitching combined with the Herculean effort from Shohei, combined with the World Series iconic moment from Freddie Freeman to win a game, that's just being real on what we got, So at some point, if you can't get all of those great things to happen at once, so far in this series, you just get your ass kicked. Like, that's just throughout the course of this series, it's gone one or two ways. Oh my God, I can't believe the Dodgers figured out a way to win that game. I am stressed. Or it's gone, man, the Blue Jays are up big. Let's just put our feet up and have a beer. Like, it's just the Blue Jays have been kicking the snot out of them. So I hear you, especially going into Game 6. And we see this here, 65.8% of teams who won Game 5 to go up 3-2 have gone on to win the World Series. I love these stats. It's so incredible. The question is, what will happen if we get to a Game 7? I just feel less confident today than I ever could have imagined that we'll get to a Game 7 because of what we saw last night. I hope, because I'm in love with this series, I'm infatuated with this series, I hope we get a Game 7. But, man, I don't know. Halloween night could get particularly spooky for everybody in L.A. As they try and watch the Dodgers figure out how not to lose the World Series. All right, we will keep breaking it down. We got more to come on the series. But coming up, that man right there, oh, he can buy all the Halloween candy. Full-size candy bars at Aidan Hutchinson's house. We'll tell you why. Oh, we love it on this show when players get paid, and Santa's got a brand new pack. Financial details, Aidan Hutchinson signing a 4-year, $180 million extension that includes $141 million guaranteed, that per his agent through Adam Schefter. That means the Lions have made Aidan the second highest paid edge rusher behind only Micah Parsons. And Aidan, I should remind the world, is only 25 years old. We're watching guys that get paid all over that can rush the passer. But reminder, Aidan Hutchinson, coming off of an absolute brutal injury and just playing so well that we forget about that, gets paid, and he's only 25. So I figure let's take a look at this, Caroline. Looking at 25-year-old players in the league, and a reminder to everybody that Micah Parsons is 26. So he is out of this conversation. If you could pick from the entire league any of these 25-year-old young guns to come in and absolutely dominate for your defense, who would you pick?
Ooh, and first of all, I mean, to be 25 and a cajillionaire must be nice to be Aidan Hutchinson. So if I can't pick Aidan Hutchinson, and look, look at Micah Parsons and some of these other elite edge rushers. Micah Parsons is 26, so let's throw him out. If we can't pick Aidan Hutchinson, I'll go Will Anderson with the Houston Texans. And no, I don't think that Will Anderson has experienced that breakout that I think we all expected when he was drafted. I expected Will Anderson to be one of those plug-ins and kind of an instant phenomenon. He hasn't done that. He hasn't come to fruition quite to the extent that I thought he would, but that does not mean that he isn't an absolute beast. I'm still waiting on that moment that Will Anderson not only becomes a household name, but become a massive issue for opposing offensive coordinators and offensive lines, the same way that we view Aidan Hutchinson or a Micah Parsons. I think Will Anderson is the kind of guy off the field, personality-wise, team-first kind of guy, and also what he can do for a defense. I'm just waiting on him that next step. I'm waiting on him to make that the true breakout to the elite status.
I like that call a lot, but when I think defensive players that are 25 or younger, and I can only pick one, I want to pick something that I don't think I can get anywhere else. And while Aidan Hutchinson is absolutely incredible, we can't even use the word generational anymore with pass rushers because Miles and Max and Micah and Aidan, like we can go share with all of them. They're all one-name superstars. But when you think about what disrupts a quarterback more than anything, it's getting hit, but particularly getting absolutely impacted up the middle. And that's why if I can only pick one, I actually go Jalen Carter. Because if I want somebody that I got one piece to build around, I honestly believe you could put, essentially, they try and do this all the time. How do you put great defensive tackles around defensive ends and try and make damage happen? Well, I would do the opposite. Build from the inside out on the defensive end, on defensive line. Give me Jalen Carter coming right up the middle and just absolutely disrupting the Patrick Mahomes of the world. And then also making sure that the Patrick Mahomes of the world don't have a pocket to step back up into. When you are a great edge rusher, you essentially are coming in and you're closing around the quarterback. Quarterback can step up and step through the throw. Well, not if Jalen Carter's there. It's a big part of why I think this Eagles defensive line is such a problem for so many teams, particularly when we get to the playoffs. They have better people running a better game plan to disrupt you up front. We saw it destroy Mahomes. We all remember the old, like, how do you make Brady uncomfortable? You get at his feet. Well, how am I going to make quarterbacks uncomfortable? I'm going to get at their feet over and over and over again. And while I love the sack numbers that we get from Aidan and Micah and everybody else that's right now the edge rushers, and they're doing such a great job, I feel like I can find closer wins above replacement. I can find closer comparable value at the edge rusher than I can at the tackle position. So I'm going straight up the middle with Jalen Carter.
It's totally fair. And Jalen Carter's 24 years old. Is that not crazy? Doesn't it feel like Jalen Carter's been in the league for so long? Doesn't it feel like he's a vet at this point and he's just 24 years old? So, yeah, I do not disagree with you in the slightest. That was another player that I had in mind of a guy that you absolutely positively can build around. But we both picked edge rushers. Like, we both picked defensive linemen. I considered, a Pat Surtain, and I considered some of these young up and coming, not even up and coming, these young defensive backs that have solidified themselves as being some of the best in the league. But Fitz, I just don't think that you can build a team around a defensive back. Whether it's a corner or a safety, getting pressure on the quarterback and being stout up front, that is the most important part of a defense. That's nothing to take away from DBs and how difficult their jobs are. But I'm not building my team through the secondary. That's not valuable enough.
No, I mean, there's no world where my defense is absolute hot garbage, but I had Kyle Hamilton, and all of a sudden that makes me a top 5 defense. It just doesn't happen. Like, as great as Kyle Hamilton is, like, so that I say that while it sounds awful, that's just it's proof to the importance of the position through all of it. Now, I want to pull this tweet up. David Hellman put out a tweet yesterday, and before I step on my soapbox, I want everyone to see the Hellman tweet because it really encapsulates what the Lions have been able to do here. As he says, wait, you mean to tell me that you can do that? You can pay a quarterback, a running back, 2 wide receivers, 2 offensive tackles, a defensive end, a cornerback, and a safety competitive near top of the market salaries and get them done quickly and still keep the lights on? Because that's exactly what the Detroit Lions have done. And Caroline, this is where I pull up my soapbox, and I want to remind the world that we love this whole, like, when Barstool made the Roger Goodell clown shirts, everybody thought that was funny. I need somebody to start mass marketing Jerry Jones in a P.T. Barnum and Bailey shirt. Like, we need to accept that at some point, Jerry Jones is no longer a serious football person. Jerry Jones is a circus ringleader. And he sits there and he lies to his fans consistently by telling them that the math is impossible when we've got teams all over the league that figure out a way to get it done. As much as I do believe that the salary cap is a real thing, and I do believe that you have to draft well when you start to pay guys, I think those are all very real elements. We see teams over and over again, whether it's through the use of voidable years, whether it's through the use of getting ahead of contracts, which is something that, I don't know, the Lions are doing, something that the Eagles have made a generation out of doing, what good teams do. The 49ers did it for years. You start to push some of that stuff down the road, you get ahead of these contracts, and you take advantage of your Super Bowl window. So not only is it maddeningly frustrating, Cowboys fans, that your defense sucks, and I get it. It's frustrating for all of us. Even more frustrating is that the man on the screen there is more interested in being a circus ringleader than he is on actually being a great football mind anymore. He's more interested in the entertainment. He wants you to step right up. He wants you to pay no attention to what's real and what's fake, and he wants to lie to you in a way that you still feel entertained and no one questions the reality of what he's actually saying. At this point, Jerry Jones is not a clown. He's too smart to be a clown. He's the person that's actually running the circus. And if he spent as much effort in actually figuring out how to run the system as, I don't know, the Lions and the Eagles do, if he spent his time worried about actual numbers and how to succeed instead of simply how to grow his entertainment business, maybe the Cowboys wouldn't be worth as much, but maybe they'd actually have Super Bowls.
It's very well said by you. And unfortunately, nothing new about Jerry Jones. We talked about this with the Micah saga, that I was so emboldened to the idea that Micah Parsons was going to be a Dallas Cowboy moving forward, because I just assumed Jerry Jones wanted to extend these negotiations out as long as possible when we are all sports Moses in the desert just seeking for any sort of sports story warm at night, that Jerry Jones just wanted to be in the headlines. And you know what? He was. And Jerry Jones, I don't know how great of a football general manager he is. I don't think he's a great one, but he's a wonderful business person. And he knows how to make sure that his team is at the top of every single conversation. One at that. He's become masterful at that. But that doesn't win you Super Bowls. So yes, I would agree that Jerry Jones does like being a story more than he likes being a competitive football team. Would he ever admit to that? Absolutely not. But I think it's kind of a message to owners across the league and if to fans across the league that any sort of argument that an organization or owner makes of, look, if we're paying this quarterback, if we're paying these receivers, we're not going to have a lot left over to build the rest of the team. That's proof. The Detroit Lions are proof. I think the Ravens, the 49ers are proof that that's true. That is a fallacy, that owners can spend as much as they would like. If they don't want to, that's up to them. That's their prerogative. But there are ways in the NFL, and it is rolling out. It is, we see it on full display with teams like the Lions, that if you are willing to spend, if you are willing to write the check right now and cough up the cash right now, you can build a roster top to bottom. You can pay several different elite players at their respective positions.
The other thing that the Lions have done, and I cannot stress this enough to every fan of a team that sucks, what the Lions have done is they've been strategic about how to draft and when to pay. They get ahead on paying, but they're paying their own. Like, this is why every single year some fan of a bad team will turn around and say, well, we have $120 million available to spend in the offseason. You're not going to get the Aidan Hutchinsons of the world that way, because the best players are drafted, homegrown, and then paid. And the smartest approach is to draft these players and then pay them early. So what you have here is, whether we're talking about Aidan or Penei Sewell or Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jahmyr Gibbs or any of the guys that are paid or are about to get paid for the Lions up and down the board, the majority of them are home drafted, homegrown, home developed, and then paid early. That's the path to get there. So your answer isn't, I want to have a bunch of money that we can spend on free agents. Your answer isn't that, because that's not truly ever going to fix your team. Your answer is, take the time, get it right, get it in the draft. I will remind the world that there was a period where Dan Campbell was on the hot seat early on, halfway through his second season, because everybody said they sucked and they couldn't get it done. They stayed patient, they drafted, they developed, and now they're signing early. The Detroit Lions are a living, eating, breathing example, if your favorite team sucks, of how you get out of the sea of suck. They are doing it, and they are a living, eating, breathing example of how you take the next step forward once you are there into being an annual contender. I just think they are putting on a master clinic right now of how to develop football. We'll keep breaking it down. We got a lot to get to in the NFL, of course, but coming up next, as we continue to break down the developments that we get through the NBA betting scandal and more, Matt Moore going to join us. See what I did there? And more. Matt Moore will join us. We'll talk to Matt about it next. Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups are not expected to receive pay while on leave of absence at per Shams. Their paycheck will reportedly be held in escrow until the FBI investigations are resolved. Yet another development as we continue to break down everything happening in the NBA, but also with this betting scandal. This is pressure builds on Adam Silver from fans and members of Congress to address the scandal that is rocking the league. So let's break it down. Matt Moore, senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joins us right now. Matt, really appreciate your time, man. Good morning this morning. What with this latest move, will that be enough to sort of quiet critics of the league's response in your mind?
Move that actually changes policy, that actually changes some sort of direction, where a lot of this is there's a lot of miscommunication on what this means for fans, and from the perspective of the reason that this is caught is the legalization of betting. It's the communication between the NBA, its third-party monitoring organizations, and state regulators. And the sports books. That communication is what allows for triggers to come off and be like, that bet does not make sense. There's way too much money coming in on Terry Rozier unders or whatever in order to kind of alert these type of things. You know, with Billups obviously involved in that poker scandal with mafia ties, obviously that's an entirely different and different kind of set of allegations. And I do think that Silver is still facing, I think, a lot of pressure to do something substantive. And a lot of this also is people want quick reactions. Oh, he's under investigation. Do something now. This actually kind of shows the seriousness of the situation. We've seen players under investigation for assault and battery, for other situations that are other criminal transgressions. And the word is always like, well, we're going to let it play out. We're going to let it play out. Instead of this, which is, making a move before those proceedings have actually played out. That shows you, I think, the seriousness of the allegations, but it also shows you the heat that there is for Silver to do something now. This, to me, is an indication of the league's concern over the public's reaction to the scandal.
Yeah, so Matt, hear me out on this for a second, because I feel like it's sort of a lose-lose situation. Tell me if I'm missing something. But if he comes out and he does something, but it's not enough when we get all of the details, then everybody's going to roast Adam Silver for not doing enough. If he comes out and does nothing, then he gets roasted. But what if there is there's still an entire trial process that's going to have to play out. We can't simply convict somebody based on accusations, right? So to me, if he does anything, there's the risk it won't be enough. If he does nothing, then everybody yells at him. Either way, it just feels like he's stuck.
Well, there's a PR problem, and then there's legal concerns here. And the biggest kind of thorn in the side is the MBPA, the players union, who put out a statement immediately that was saying, while we take the allegations very seriously, this breaks the presumption of innocence, which, the NBA is actually not, held to. They're not forced to operate under those kind of procedures. They can act without that kind of assumption. But the players union are going to defend their players no matter what, especially over their pay. They're going to fight the NBA over any sort of system where they withhold funds that are owed to players here. So there's always going to kind of be that tension point. And Silver has to manage that relationship, has to make sure that he doesn't leave the league open to lawsuit, has to be able to satisfy the PR demands. There's a lot of balancing that has to go on here. Meanwhile, the public is always going to be under the presumption of guilt in these type of situations because of the outrage that I think the transgressions cause.
I hate the oversimplification on a very complicated matter. It's also complicated with Rozier, particularly because let's acknowledge that he traded a first-round pick to the Charlotte Hornets a little after a year after the game in question, where it's alleged he took himself out. The NBA investigated Rozier, but it appears they never shared that in this process with the Heat. So is there some world here where the Heat have a justifiable argument for wanting to get that pick back?
I think there's probably an argument, but I don't think it's going to be enough for it to actually change the matter. There is kind of a presumption within league circles of you got to do your own intel here. You have to do your own research. You got to be informed on what's going on, and you take those risks when you make this type of a deal. And so, if a player was under investigation and nothing happened, then what? Right. So I think that there's always going to be a level here of you've got to know what you're getting into between teams. So the Heat are going to make a lot of noise about it. The Heat are absolutely going to pursue this at the furthest end of trying to get some sort of compensation for the trade. But I think they're going to have a hard time running into this because some of this is you can't really be revealing those type of investigations under threat of compromising the investigation. Not only that, but you're also risking, if a player's under investigation but you don't have all the facts yet, you can't risk smearing that player publicly just in allowing for the trade talks to be held in transparency. Teams are never going to hold all factors in transparency and trade talk. So I think the Heat will try and make this argument, but I don't think it's going to be enough for them to be able to generate any sort of compensation for the pick.
The minute you said you got to know, all I can think of is like Kenny Rogers. You got to know when to, which I totally shouldn't sing in this segment, but come on, I got to get there. All right. So in the wake of this, let's be honest. There's some pretty vocal criticism right now happening about the between the relationship between betting and the league. Should there be more distance in your mind?
No, and I'm compromised on that because I write for a site that covers betting angles, right? So like I could admit the bias here. But I do think it's important for fans to understand the relationships here. Like I kind of started out in the beginning, the relationship between the sports books needs to exist. And the NBA's position, actually, if you kind of get into it, is they prefer federal legislation so that they can strengthen the monitoring systems. Currently, what you're dealing with is state by state monitoring systems because it's legal in every state. So you're basically dealing with all of these different variations of the sports books who deal with different regulatory agencies in concert with a few companies that the NBA works with on third-party monitoring. But that's why this gets caught. The big question that fans need to be asking is not like, oh man, they legalized sports betting and now we have all these scandals. The question is, are they just getting caught now? Because sports betting has been around much longer than the legalization have back in 2019. But these markets were open overseas in unregulated markets with no oversight. And that is, I think, a really damaging question to start asking, because it does make you wonder how much of this has gone on and we just did not know. The idea that the mafia is involved in any sort of operation related to sports betting and that only happened because the league started running ads for sports books, I think is probably a little ridiculous. Now, at the same time, does there need to be a show of good faith in terms of changing some of these markets? Probably. Prop betting in particular, I think, needs to shift. But when the players can complain about it because of the treatment that they get from fans, and the fans complain about it, but they still root for the players to get paid. They're like, oh, good for that guy. Love that guy. Go get that money. Well, that money is being generated by the sports books. Jaylen Brown this week talked about how the players don't see any of that, but the money goes into BRI, which is part of what funds the players' salaries. Like the league makes money off of it. The players make money off of it. If you do want the separation, I can understand that absolutely as a fan, but you better be ready for the ramifications of that, which means more betting without oversight. And it means that the possibility of the salary going down, which can impact teams and players.
I also just want to remind the world, as a kid that grew up a fan of UNLV basketball, just go research the 1990 UNLV basketball team and the fixing allegations. Like, this has been going on forever. Okay, you host Locked On Nuggets. Jokic, 4 straight triple-doubles. I picked the Nuggets on this show to go to the NBA Finals, unlike my co-host. So just saying, I'm taking shots here. Is he going to reclaim the MVP award by the end of the season?
I don't think so. Actually, the last time we had a player over the age of 29 win the MVP was back with Steve Nash. Kobe Bryant did it at 28. Like, this just does not really happen for players of this age. Guys after 30 tend to shift their attention, their focus. The other thing here is if you look at, Jokic has got 4 straight triple doubles, but look at his point totals. They're down significantly because Jokic doesn't want to play like he did last year, where he was having to do absolutely everything every single night. This team is going to be a wagon, and they're going to be one of the best teams in the league. I think they're going to be the best offense in the league. But I think Jokic in particular does not want to have to play like he did last year, averaging 28, 29, 30 points while putting up a triple-double. He wants to have nights where, like he has had recently, where it's 17, 15, and 15. That's more of what Jokic wants to do. He wants more contributions from the other guys, and they're going to be so good, they're going to blow out a lot of teams. He's not going to have to play as many minutes and not going to have to put up the numbers. I don't think Jokic is winning MVP, but it's going to be a good reminder this year that he is, in fact, the best player in the world, and this Nuggets team is a serious threat to win the title.
So let's talk about some other old guys then, because the 76ers off to a hot start. We want to make this about Embiid and George. I understand that. But their youth is what's really gotten them to this hot start also. So who are the 76ers moving forward? Are they about to be this great young team that's about to ascend, or are they young guys just waiting for the old guys to get back on the court and get healthy?
I think this is a great young team that's ready to ascend, and that makes things very complicated. If you watch the way that they play without Embiid, it is pretty impressive. Like, they play free, they play open. Embiid was really good the other night. He really was. In his 20 minutes, he was really good, and they were losing without him. But then they staged this huge comeback because that's how they play. They play with a verve and a level of energy that is not present when Embiid's on the court, and the splits are kind of showing that so far. Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, Quentin Grimes, they're going to get Jared McCain back. They play open with a lot of spacing. They've got guys like Andre Drummond and Adem Bona playing great defense on the interior. Kelly Oubre is filling in the gaps. Like, this team's identity is extremely fun when Embiid's not on the court. And I don't want to make that about that, because it's not Embiid's fault that he's dealing with the knee injuries that he's had to deal with. But I do think this is going to get to a point of real tension, because the Sixers are so committed to trying to make it work with Embiid. And now you have this opportunity that's there that's very apparent. You don't know if when's Embiid's going to play, how much he's going to be able to play. And this other team that they've got, this kind of second version of the team, is so exciting. That's going to make for, I think, some uncomfortable questions in Philadelphia.
Yeah, look, it moves better, it flows better, it's more explosive without him on the. You're right. Everything you just said, it just looks better, passes the eye test better. It will become interesting if the franchise that told an entire generation to trust the process now has to look at youth and say, no. I know it's hard. It's hard. I'm just saying. What about the other side? A team that we're used to being great for a long time. The Warriors are 4-1 right now. We obviously made a lot last year at the end of the year about what Jimmy meant to that team. But where are they right now? Now that we've seen this sample size this season, how do they stack up in the West to you?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're playing elite defense right now, and they're tough, and their veterans know how to get it done. They're getting great contributions from a lot of the role players, which gets missed. Like, it's the headlines are always going to be Steph, Jimmy, and Dre, but they legitimately, I think, are getting a lot of. It's what's opening up for those other guys. Now, the best comp I can kind of make for this team right now is those two early 2010 Celtics teams after they won the title, at the 2012 team that pushed the Heat to the brink. That's the best comp for this, because it's a veteran team that just kind of knows how to put you in bad positions, will play defense, and then you got Steph Curry being Steph Curry. They have to be considered a contender. I don't know if I look at them and think that they have the kind of firepower to match up with OKC or Denver. Houston, I think, is probably going to get itself together at some point. But if they can hit the right series of matchups, I do think the Warriors can make a surprise run to the NBA Finals.
Okay, so let me be cute here for a second then. Is this all just fun conversation until we really just get to OKC getting right back to where they were? Because, I don't know. I haven't seen anything from OKC that makes me believe less in them this year. Have you?
A little bit. So the important thing is to kind of be like, oh, hey, like, they're undefeated. Everything's great. Jalen Williams hasn't even played. It didn't matter who was in, who was out last year. They killed teams. Like, they destroyed everybody. You got 2 double overtime games. They took care of business versus the Hawks, because the Hawks didn't have their entire front court, and the Hawks aren't very good. They have to come back from way down versus the Kings to stage a comeback. This happened with Boston last year, where everyone was like, are we just wasting time until Boston goes back to the NBA championship? But along the way, it was like, hey, Boston isn't quite as good as last year. Like, they're still great, but they're not quite as good. So, like, the OKC Thunder, I think, so far are a little vulnerable. Now, maybe Jalen Williams gets back, and Casey Wallace came back from injury a little bit here. Everybody gets back together, and they just click, and they look dominant, and they go on this run, and they absolutely are destroying teams again. But so far, this looks like, are they the best team in the league? Yes. Are they the favorites? 100%. Are they unbeatable? I don't know about that. Like, the door, I think, is a little bit open here, because you have to reinvent yourself every year. Sam Presti said that at his opening season presser. I think the OKC are going to have to reinvent themselves a little bit here. And if they're just not quite as good defensively, if they're not quite as good at some of the things this season, with the role players, perhaps, I think that does open the door for teams like Denver, for Golden State, and for whoever comes out of the East to be able to have a shot against them.
I think I'll admit my confirmation bias, because everything you just said reads to what we've seen. I've just read it more as like, for 3 quarters, they're just sitting around. They're like, all right, let's just go ahead and end this thing. And then in the 4th quarter, they come through. But your point is a very valid one, because I think I was late to the party last year to realize and acknowledge that Boston was different. So, that's what makes Matt. Check him out on Action Network, Locked On Podcast, and the Substack Hardwood Paroxysm. Matt Moore. Matt, really appreciate your time, man. Thanks for hanging out with us this morning.
Anytime for you, man. Take care.
It's great stuff from Matt. Can't wait for this season to keep rolling. In the meantime, we'll keep rolling. How about some rookies that it is time? Not rookies, good Lord. How about some young players it's time to watch take off and fly? We'll do that next. How about this last night? Austin Reeves coming up, little floater in the lane, and that is the way that the Lakers take down the Timberwolves in a game that they absolutely wild finish on this one. Austin Reeves with the game winner, a little bit of a floater there. Lakers fans and Lakers greats all rejoicing from it. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz, they're flying high. Another special night from Reeves. Caroline, there are a bunch of young players across the league that look like they have the engines fired up. They're ready to rock the NBA, take it to stardom. But the question is, are they cleared for takeoff or will they get stuck on the runway, right? So we're going to do takeoff or stuck on the runway, and we will start with Austin Reeves, especially after last night. I'm just going to say it. Look, so far early in the season, the one of the, I think, the best stories so far has just been watching that man do those things with virtually nothing around him. After the game, he was quick to point out he can't wait for Luka to come back. He got praise from Luka and LeBron on Twitter last night. But without Luka and LeBron, he's out here saying, no, I can be the guy. Like, you need me to be the guy, I'll be the guy. Like, he's clear for takeoff all the way for me.
I mean, it's hard to say that he's not when he's averaging 34 points a game, fourth most in the NBA. We're less than a week removed from a 51-point game, his career best. So he's doing all of the right things. And he also plays for a premier organization in the NBA in the Los Angeles Lakers. My only hesitation comes from the fact that he will be the third most important story on his team. That he will be the third, sexiest name on the Los Angeles Lakers. So if you are the third most important player on your team from the public perception, not by the box score, because right now it's hard to argue that anybody's more important to the Lakers than Austin Reeves is right now. Right now, everybody calm down. Slow your roll. But from the public perception, Austin Reeves is tertiary on that Lakers team. If you are tertiary on your team, how big of a star can you really be? So it's almost like playing for the Lakers, having that that moniker, that brand attached to your name can do wonders for how marketable you are, how much you're talked about on daily sports talk shows. But also at the same time, it almost, I feel like in a way, hurts Austin Reeves' brand because no matter what happens, it feels like right now, of course, anything can change. Right now, the two most important stories and the two most engaging stories surrounding the Los Angeles Lakers are LeBron James and Luka Doncic. And we're not talking about Austin Reeves enough. That's probably our fault as media, far more than it is Austin Reeves. But to become a star, you have to become a star in the media as well.
But here's the thing. I mean, not only did he have the points last night, he had 16 assists last night. Like, what we're talking, he's got a fun nickname, Hillbilly Mamba. Like, you got everything you need through all of this.
So good. I
Here's the other part.
I know.
But hear me out. What if LeBron just eases on back? What if LeBron takes his time getting back? And what we end up finding is like this sciatic, it takes a little bit more time. LeBron's not worried about basketball in January or February. We get very little of LeBron all the way up until the playoffs. And in that time, we get the ascending, Hillbilly Mamba partnered up with, the Luka portion of this. I'm all in on this. I'm in on this being sort of the combo that becomes much like we were just talking about more about the fact that, as much as, look, Embiid is nowhere near where LeBron is, but the 76ers are facing this moment, this youth movement of like, hey, we've got something here we can build around. What if that's what's happening right now with Austin Reeves and eventually Austin and Luka? Like, I think right now today, I'm buying the possibility of Austin and Luka lifting the Lakers more than I'm relying on LeBron.
Totally. I mean, I would buy that every single day and twice on Sundays. I think maybe that's kind of the crux of my point is just keep doing it. Like if LeBron can, like Lowell's coming back a little bit, maybe we don't see LeBron until closer to 2026, and Austin Reeves continues what he's doing, continues averaging 35 points a game, has more 40 plus 50 plus games, then yes, absolutely, Austin Reeves will become more and more of that story. But I mean, I even then, I think it's when will LeBron come back? How much better is this Lakers team going to be when LeBron comes back? Like, is that fair? Of course not. Of course it's not fair. We should be giving Austin Reeves his due and then some. But I think I just know the news cycle and I know what sells, and LeBron James sells. That's not any sort of hot take. So if Austin Reeves keeps doing it, and especially, fast forward to the springtime whenever we're getting into postseason and Austin Reeves is continuing to do this, well then yes, absolutely. We're talking about Austin Reeves is an absolute household name. Whereas Whereas now it's, okay, what you're doing is great and it's fun and you are carrying this Lakers team. Keep doing it, continue to win games, and continue to carry this team despite what LeBron and Luka are doing. Acknowledge that's not fair. I totally get that.
I'm going to take your same logic and I'm going to apply it to Aidan Hutchinson for the Rockets, because he's next up on our, is he about to be a rocket ship that takes off? And my answer to that is no. And I think there's a couple of reasons. I'm going to admit my own hypocrisy, because everything you just said about the Lakers is what I'm going to steal and say about the Rockets here. Number one, Aidan is such a great player on both ends of the court. I hate to say two-way player because we seem to use that as some sort of a way to downplay somebody's offense. It's not. He's great defensively. I don't know that the world really gives a damn about defense. So, like, you could be great defensively and everyone's like, that's cute. I don't know that he's going to get enough offensive production consistently night in and night out with the way that the Rockets are built right now and the addition of KD to really resonate on that level. So because KD is such a presence and a force and an impact to the way that they're going to be run on the offensive side of the ball and to some end on the defensive side, I'm going to say that this rocket ship doesn't take off for Aidan. What do you think?
I think I tend to agree with you. And let me just point out the hypocrisy of myself and I think basketball fans everywhere. We all complain about how nobody in the NBA plays defense. We got these 140 to 148 games. Like what are we doing here in the NBA? And then a player is, close to an elite defender and we're like, no, thank you. We're not interested. Like, where's the guy that can shoot from three? Where are the guys that can generate some offense? I just don't think that defense is sexy enough in the NBA to become that certified superstar. The only way is if offensive buckets are so good and KD continues scoring at this clip, and KD is scoring averaging just shy of 30 points a game. If the Rockets continue to put up those offensive numbers, I think we're almost going to be forced to pay attention to Aidan Hutchinson and what he's doing defensively. Kind of, I think about to those Chicago Bulls. I mean, yes, Michael Jordan was, the star of those teams, but because we were paying attention to the Chicago Bulls, then we had to pay attention to Dennis Rodman and what he was doing defensively. Yes, we're talking about the best defensive player to ever play the sport. I mean, Aidan Hutchinson is a far cry from that, but you get what I'm saying here, right? That we're going to be forced to pay attention to what he's doing defensively if the Rockets just continue to score at such a high clip. But I think for right now, just defense is not sexy enough. That offense sells. We pay attention to offense. We pay attention to half-court shots. We pay attention to, whoever's shooting several threes a game. We pay attention to Steph Curry and what he can do from beyond the arc. We're not paying attention to defense.
Well, and paying attention to offense is the whole reason that when we get to the next one, LaMelo Ball, look, I don't want to bog anybody down with details here, but Charlotte actually looks like they're going to be a fun team to watch this year. I don't know if they're going to win a lot of games. I don't know. But I know they're going to score a hell of a lot of points every single night. They are just putting up points. And I'm kind of in on this one. I think LaMelo, A, he's got the brand of being LaMelo, right? But B, he's going to be playing for Charlotte on a very, I think, fun to watch explosive offense. I'm in on the rocket ship of LaMelo about to launch and take off to another level.
I'm buying this. I mean, he's a ball brother, first of all. That's enough. That already is going to give you a strong enough platform, and you're already a sexy enough name to talk about. And he's also just so fun to watch. I mean, you're watching it right there. 38 points, 13 assists, 13 rebounds, a triple-double on the night. That I think that we are prepped and ready for LaMelo Ball to be one of those guys that kind of dominate the NBA conversation. My only hesitation is, and this is coming from somebody who lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, okay? So I'm allowed to say this. I feel like I pay taxes in Charlotte. Is Charlotte holding him back? Is not playing for a premier big-time market or a premier team holding back LaMelo Ball? Because let's be honest, if we have 5 or 6 young players that have big-time performances, a Charlotte Hornet is not going to catapult to the top of the list of priorities to talk about, even if he is a Ball brother. So that's my only sense of hesitation, is the market that he plays in, but everything else checks every important box of being a certified superstar in this league.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just look, right now they're 2-2. And like I said, I'm not sure they're going to play enough defense. I kind of wish that we could merge some of these teams we're talking about. I'm not sure they're going to play enough defense to win an electric number of games. But in their 2 wins, they scored 136 and 139 points, respectively. So, like, you're talking about just a boatload of opportunities to make highlight reels after highlight reel after highlight reel, and it's going to run through him. So, in my mind, when you combine the fact that you've got an already impressive brand, you've got somebody that has already been an all-star, you've got somebody that is going to be part of a team that is scoring a ton of points, and just to your point, he is a ball brother. Like, what part of the negative that comes with that is everything's paid attention to. Part of the positive that comes with that is everything's paid attention to. And he's a highlight reel. Like, we in this modern society of NBA coverage, we love anybody that we can watch highlights on Snapchat, right? Like, anybody that's going to be out there where it's like we can digest it in 3 seconds. He's an easily digestible superstar that makes great plays that you sit there and say, oh my God, I can't believe I just saw that. That's part of what makes him an easy pick for me. But the broader crux of this entire conversation is that it's obviously clear, as always, it feels like there are a bunch of young guns in the NBA that are just currently rising. The future of the NBA from a star status always seems to look bright. All right, we'll keep breaking down the future, but maybe not in the same bright way. The future of one NFL superstar might be up in the air. Could A.J. Brown be on the move? More importantly, where's he going? We'll figure that out. It feels like the Eagles are shopping A.J. Brown without officially shopping A.J. Brown. That from Pro Football Talk, as we try to figure out what's going on with the superstar Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver. Yahoo Sports Daily, Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. And look, if they're quietly shopping him, then I think the question, Caroline, becomes who's quietly shopping for him? Because let's not get it twisted. Whatever the A.J. Brown conversation is with the Philadelphia Eagles, A.J. Brown is to some teams out there going to be a superstar that's a difference maker, right? Like, I think we have to acknowledge here that whatever's going on in Philadelphia, fine, you put that in a box, you set it over here. That doesn't change the fact that there are a handful of teams in the NFL that would absolutely benefit right now today from A.J. Brown being on their team, correct?
1,000%. I mean, I don't think we give A.J. Brown enough credit for how solid of a receiver he is, how much of a weapon A.J. Brown is. He's not the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb category, but I think he's much closer to those guys than we maybe give him credit for.
So with that being said, I feel like instead of just sitting here saying, A.J. Brown, whatever, work it out with Philly, let's figure out who's shopping for him. If he's quietly being shopped, let's take a look at some teams that we think could be shopping for him and why. And I'll start with the Buffalo Bills. And this one to me is pretty obvious. Like, it's just pretty obvious because right now what we're seeing, I think Dan Orlovsky described it as a frustrated Josh Allen. Like, this is not the best of Josh Allen at all. Like, Josh Allen so far this year has not been necessarily the Josh Allen that we're used to seeing, but I also have said for the last several years, sometimes it feels like the offense is just roll the ball out to Josh and hope he gets something done. Now, James Cook has been absolutely incredible this year. There is no doubt about it. He has been a superstar. So your running game is firing on all cylinders. But this is supposed to be that window. This is supposed to be the moment where your team's going to come in and take advantage of a wide open, supposedly AFC. You want to take down the Chiefs, I think you need more than what you have in that locker room right now. So if you're going to go out and make a move, make the most aggressive move that you possibly can for the best player. I realize that I'm usually the one that says, hey, build patiently, not when you're the Bills. Screw the future. Right now you have a Super Bowl window. You have a Super Bowl opportunity. If you have a chance to acquire A.J. Brown, you go do it, and then you roll the dice. And if it doesn't work, all right, at least you did everything you could today to try and win a Super Bowl this season.
I could not agree with you more. That I think the Bills are the team that I'm circling more than anyone else in the NFL to be the most aggressive as we near the trade deadline. Because I agree 100% with this tweet right here. It feels like malpractice. If Brandon Beane doesn't just pick up the phone and try and get a number one receiver or at least more weapons for Josh Allen. It feels like sometimes, at times, just Josh Allen is that meme of the Maserati in a trailer park, that it just doesn't feel like he has enough support around him offensively, and then the defense can sputter at times. How in the world are you going to have Josh Allen, the reigning league MVP, and a guy that absolutely can get you to the promised land, and not give him enough weapons around him? So I think that A.J. Brown would be a great fit. I think he has that kind of gritty mentality that fits very well with the Buffalo Bills. So totally co-sign 100% with you on that. I would also throw another team out there, the 49ers. Look, the 49ers are not out of the conversation. The 49ers, yes, they are third in the NFC West. I think that's the most competitive division in football. So being third in that division, I don't think is anything to scoff at. The 49ers are still 5-3. And Brock Purdy might be coming back this weekend. We've at least opened the door to the possibility to Brock Purdy coming back. But when your leading receiver is Christian McCaffrey, I'm sorry, no disrespect to CMC, but when your leading receiver is a running back and Ricky Pearsall's been banged up, Juwan Jennings been banged up, George Kittle has been banged up, when this team has been so riddled with injury all season long, but they've still found ways to win football games, and you're still in a Super Bowl window, it feels like, as long as you're healthy enough on that roster, why not try and just add one more piece and say, okay, we feel like maybe we're not just one A.J. Brown away from winning a Super Bowl, but that just gives us one more option, one more healthy option, knock on wood, to continue to win football games.
Yeah, the fact is, I love this call by you, which is why if I'm Philly, I would never do it. The only thing for me that would scare me if I'm Philly is I don't want to keep him in the NFC, because you're 1,000% right. When you look at the way the standings are right now, if I'm going to trade him somewhere, by God, the one thing I don't want to do is take any chance that I'm going to see him in the playoffs. And if the playoffs were to start today, I pulled the standings up. If the playoffs were to start today, 49ers would be the 7th seed. So they're in this thing, right? So all of a sudden, man, I am making that team so much better by adding A.J. Brown. Now, maybe, as I've said before, we have to acknowledge that the team that has somebody may be willing to let that level of crazy go. Like, it's possible the Eagles look around and say, hey, you want him? You can have him. Like, maybe they have that level of confidence. But I would be at least slightly concerned about being snake bit. But you're also right that, it's interesting to me. It feels like for most teams, we hold this thing over their head. The Bills, the Ravens, anybody that can't take down the best team in their conference, we hold it over their head and say, when are you going to take advantage of the window you're in? I think maybe it's a fair conversation to have about San Francisco too. At some point, it doesn't really matter to me the why anymore. What's real is that San Francisco is always right on the doorstep and hasn't been able to get a Super Bowl ring out of it. And it's interesting to me that whether it was with Jimmy G as a quarterback or Brock Purdy as a quarterback, like, they can get right there, but they don't have that ring yet. And we don't talk about San Francisco in that conversation the same way we talk about everybody else that has been thwarted by. Like, we don't give context to why there isn't a ring in Buffalo. We don't give context to why there isn't a ring in Baltimore. We just yell about it. Well, I think there's probably if we took the same level of analysis that we give to why those teams don't have a ring, I think it's fair to look at San Francisco and say, when are you going to do something? Like, figure it out. You're on the doorstep. Figure it out.
And if it's not AJ Brown, because if we want to be, actually realistic, if the Eagles do deal AJ Brown, he's not going anywhere in NFC. I don't think that my gosh, I don't think the Eagles are dealing him at all, but they're sure as heck not going to trade him in the NFC, because I do think that there are enough AFC teams that are receiver needy, that are right on that cusp of feeling like they have a well-rounded, truly champion contending kind of roster, that would be willing to give up the equity that it would take to acquire AJ Brown. So he's not going in the NFC, but I wouldn't hate to see the 49ers make some sort of move for a reliable, healthy weapon offensively.
Well, and that's when you start talking about who will trade for him. I think part of the equation. There's a couple of things. Everybody's going to yell at us about salary cap. I'll remind everybody that you can restructure some things and figure that out. So the Bills can restructure Josh Allen. They can figure it out. For example, 49ers can figure it out. A team that I think right now would love to figure out a way to just become a little bit more dynamic would be the Chargers, right? Like Justin Herbert is absolutely Justin Herbert. But when you're sitting here looking around at their wide receivers and saying, okay, can we do better than that? Especially given how beat up they are at the running back position, especially given how bad this offensive line has been because of injuries over the course of the year. Would you make a desperate move to try and get yourself right over the hump when it looks like you are in proximity? You are in fighter's chance range of the Kansas City Chiefs. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Chargers to be somewhat aggressive here in trying to figure out just an absolute clear-cut number one, we will kick your ass. They've got some good weapons, but do you get yourself so much more dynamic opportunity by simply adding a guy that day one becomes somebody defenses have to factor for?
I think 32 teams in the league get more dynamic with AJ Brown. That's the kind of player that I think AJ Brown is, and that does feel like that's where the Chargers are kind of lacking. That the Chargers are, anemic in the run game. So giving Justin Herbert more pass catching options, I think would be huge for this team, especially when they're up against the Kansas City Chiefs in the division. And what I think AJ Brown is so good at, what makes him so great, is yak. He is a yak king. So what's the Chargers' issue right now? It's pass protecting. It's the offensive line breakdown with all of these injuries that they've suffered in the offensive line. And yes, Joe Alt is getting back, and they look like a better unit with Joe Alt back into the mix. But without Rashawn Slater, you're still not going to be able to get close to your ceiling. So what AJ Brown could give you is an easy target close to the line of scrimmage, and then once he has the ball in his hands, you can let him do his thing. That this Chargers offensive line, at least as currently constructed, is not going to be able to hold up to let routes develop downfield. So AJ Brown gives you a rough and tumble and yak kind of guy to be able to make big plays that might seem, dead to rights from the beginning. That the offensive line have to hold up for long routes to develop downfield. I think he would be a great fit in LA.
Yeah, and by the way, I think Labaconke is absolutely spectacular and is going to grow into a incredible pro. Quentin Johnson has been a pleasant surprise throughout the course of this season. Mm-hmm. But your leading wide receiver out there is Keenan Allen, and A.J. Brown is definitely an upgrade at this point and at any point over Keenan Allen and where he is. All right, give me one more that you've got your eye on.
The New England Patriots. I think this one just makes all the sense in the world to me for so many different reasons. One, Drake May looks like an absolute vet. I mean, Drake May is the New England Patriots' future, if that isn't obvious to everyone already. But it's not a roster that I think really pops off the page. I mean, Stephon Diggs, yes, I think has had a great career renaissance in New England, but let's be honest about where Stephon Diggs is in his career and who Stephon Diggs is at this point in his career. A.J. Brown adds that next level of speed, adds that next kind of receiver that you absolutely positively have to pay attention to, which opens up so many other things in the pass game. So that's kind of like the X's and O's part that I see. The level of dynamicism, is that a word? Dynamic? How dynamic, thank you. Sure, why not? I'm not a dictionary. Okay, it's early in the morning. A.J. Brown adds that to your offense and adds yet another weapon for Drake May. When Drake May can do this with Kayshon Boutte, Hunter Henry, Mac Hollins, and Stephon Diggs, imagine what he can do with A.J. Brown, a certified number one in this league. And I'm bearing the lead here. The obvious, who is the head coach of the New England Patriots? It's Mike Vrabel, who was his head coach for a long time in Tennessee. And Mike Vrabel has talked so much about how close he and AJ's relationship is, and vice versa. AJ's talked a lot about how great his relationship is with Mike Vrabel. That yes, age to stink in Philadelphia. He did the same thing in Tennessee. His Twitter fingers were Twitter fingering just as much in Tennessee as they are in Philadelphia. But I think that Mike Vrabel understands AJ Brown enough to say, okay, reel it in. He knows what he needs to set him up, to make him feel like he's appreciated, to make him feel like he's being fed. So relationship and understanding that Josh McDaniels offense, I think, would be an instant plug and play, and he would be an instant spark plug for this Patriots offense, because the Patriots, don't look now, they're the top seed in the AFC East. The Patriots very much so are in the postseason conversation, which only gets emphasized even more once AJ Brown, if AJ Brown joins the fold.
I mean, to that end, I think everything you just laid out is why the Patriots, I think, improve the most with A.J. Brown. Of everybody we laid out, the Patriots improve the most, but that's why the Bills need him the most. Because the one thing you can't do if you're Buffalo, like if the New England Patriots add A.J. Brown, they will be a better team throughout the rest of the season than the Buffalo Bills are. That would be a secret weapon that would make them a more dynamic offense. It will make them a better football team. I believe that the Patriots would win the division over the Buffalo Bills if they added A.J. Brown right now. So to me, it becomes even more desperate for the Bills at this point to say, you know what? Part of the reason we're going to add A.J. Brown is if anybody's shopping for him, we're going to make sure it's not New England that gets him. If anybody's not going to get their hands on him, it's going to be the team in this division that we're going to be fighting for the division crown with. We could be fighting for home field in the playoffs. We could be fighting for seeding. This could decide whether or not the playoffs go through New York or whether they go through Foxborough. Like, you start talking about what it could mean for the AFC playoff structure, it's massive. So even if the Bills don't necessarily love the idea of A.J. Brown, I still think they have to go out and outbid the Patriots for him, just simply to play defense in the transaction and make sure that the Pittsburgh Steelers don't walk away from the trade deadline one A.J. Brown closer to being in the Super Bowl.
The Pittsburgh Steelers?
Oh, the Pittsburgh. Well,
is that Steelers, what you? Sorry.
No. But that's what I'm saying. No. I'm saying the Patriots are closer to the Super Bowl if they add A.J. Brown. So the Bills have to do it. So the Patriots are going to. Of course. The Steelers don't need him because the Steelers defense is still going to suck. It doesn't matter who you put in there. The Steelers defense is still going to suck. So Pittsburgh, don't waste your equity. Go getting A.J. Brown because your defense is still going to be hot garbage.
They're beyond fixing. I like the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, if they make the playoffs, then great. It'll be the same thing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They'll barely eke in. They'll play a team that's better than them, and they'll lose in the first round of the playoffs. So if they're a non-starter for me in this. All of this to say, and I will stand by that, I think any team in the league gets better because of A.J. Brown. But what chance do we really give it that the Eagles are actually going to trade A.J. Brown? Like, there's been a lot of buzz about that. I feel like this buzz has been ongoing for several weeks, especially ever since, the Bible verse that A.J. Brown tweeted out about, if you're not respected, so on and so forth. Do we, what percentage chance do you think is it that A.J. Brown gets traded?
3%. I'll give you 3% chance. Look, if you're the Eagles.
3 whole percents.
Like, why would you do this if you're Philadelphia? You've already spent the majority of the money that you have to spend on it this year, so it's not like you're cash poor anyway if you're Philly. So you don't need to get it off your books. At some point, what you've seen throughout the course of the playoffs and Super Bowl is that there are moments where you need A.J. Brown, and he makes you a better football team. So certainly you can turn around and say, hey, we're not going to take the chance that we make ourselves less than when we have plenty to fight for right now, and we're trying to get to another Super Bowl, which is part of what we just sort of gloss over. Like, yeah, I know for 1 week that they looked fine and A.J. Brown wasn't a big part of it. It was like, oh, Eagles are even better. That's fine. Who cares? Why would you make anybody else in the league stronger and yourself weaker for a future draft pick that won't help you right now when you are also in a Super Bowl window? I don't think the move makes any sense for Philadelphia because Philadelphia right now as it stands has a very real shot at getting back to the Super Bowl. So why would they take any future equity consideration that makes them less than today?
And realistically, NFC, AFC doesn't matter. Any team that would be interested in trading A.J. Brown is probably a team that the Eagles are going to have to go through to win a Super Bowl. Whether it's the Eagles or whether it's the Kansas City Chiefs, probably not the New England Patriots because I don't view them as legitimate Super Bowl contenders. But what you are doing is making a postseason team, what looks like a postseason team right now, stronger. And it doesn't make any sense because even though A.J. Brown, maybe his stats week after week aren't popping off the page, maybe A.J. Brown isn't being fed the way that he wants to be, but just A.J. Brown's presence makes opposing defenses have to pay attention to him. And if you don't, then you will pay. Having A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, even in an offense that isn't overly pass happy, opens so much up for the run game. Having both of them on the field, if you want to double Devontae Smith, well, then you're going to leave A.J. Brown vulnerable and vice versa. And that's not very wise to do that. If you have the best, if not the best, wide receiver tandem in the National Football League, if you are several months away removed from a Super Bowl, if you believe you still have the roster to compete for a Super Bowl, which why wouldn't you? It's essentially the exact same roster as last season. If you feel that as long as you have this roster as currently constructed, you are in a Super Bowl window, which is I think what they are in, why move on from that? Why try and be cute and convince yourself that we don't need A.J. Brown in order to win a Super Bowl when A.J. Brown was the spark plug to get you to the Super Bowl and then ultimately to win a Super Bowl? So it just does not make sense to me. And if the Eagles do decide to deal A.J. Brown, I'm going to be looking around wondering, what in the world is Howie Roseman doing? Which is not a question that I ask very often. Because every time Howie Roseman does anything, I'm like, mama, there goes that man. How did he get away with highway robbery again? I think that Howie Roseman is too smart. I think the Eagles are too set up for success as currently constructed.
I would never trade with the Philadelphia Eagles because nobody ever gets the best of Howie Roseman. And next Wednesday after the NFL trade deadline, when we're sitting here and none of this magic has happened and everybody else has been making everybody scream about it, we'll have victory cigars. I don't even smoke cigars, but we'll get victory cigars. All right, somebody on Sunday is going to get to smoke some victory cigars in the matchup of the century this year. We get this every year, but it's still the matchup of the century this year. Chiefs Bills, we'll tell you about it next. Josh Allen versus the Chiefs, regular season. 4-1, 296 yards per game, 25.8 points. Postseason, 0-4, 327 total yards per game, 28.3 per game. Bills defense has allowed 28, almost 21 points per game versus Chiefs in the regular season versus almost 35 in the playoffs since 2020. What does that tell us, Ian? Great work by you as we figure out what to look for in Sunday's matchup of the century, right? Because we've got this now for the 10th time since 2010. We are getting the Chiefs versus the Bills, and it is every year the annual, oh my God, I can't believe we get this game this year. The same thing that happened with the Colts and the Patriots for a generation. Every year we got Manning versus Brady, and we loved it because that's the way the NFL is built. We get this every year. Caroline, I am just going to be the beacon of light in a dark, dark world that I am all the time and just tell the world, this game's completely meaningless. Everybody's going to tell you why it's the best game in history. This game is completely meaningless. I'm just going to be that guy. I'm the Grinch. We haven't even hit Halloween yet, and I'm the Grinch. Because the fact is, if Buffalo goes out and wins by 50, if Buffalo wins 50-0, all we're going to say is, yeah, it doesn't matter till we see it in the playoffs. Like, that's all we're going to say about it. And if the Chiefs win 50-0, will that matter if the Bills play the Chiefs in the playoffs? No. The only thing we care about is when these two teams play in the playoffs because Josh Allen hasn't gotten over that hump. So literally nothing that happens Sunday will matter. That's my beacon of light.
I don't know if I would consider that light, but it's not wrong. Like, you're not wrong. And this will be marketed as the game of the century until the next time we see these two play. But I want so badly for this to be, the premier game. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs, a battle of the heavyweights in the regular season. But you're right. None of it matters because it doesn't feel like anything that these two teams do in the regular season matters. Because if the Chiefs don't win a Super Bowl, well, that's a disappointment for Chiefs fans. We saw that last year. If the Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season, that's great. They've done that before. But that's not the Bills' prerogative this season. That's not the Bills' goal this season. The Bills' goal in their window and their expectation is Super Bowl. It is Super Bowl or bust. So it does kind of feel like anything that they do before the season is just kind of like, okay, great. Especially for the Bills. For the Chiefs, the Chiefs could go on a 3-game losing streak and I still wouldn't be overly concerned. That's a benefit of the doubt that Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs have earned. But for the Bills, that's great and all. Let's see you do it in January. Because that's where this team has fallen short. That's not to say that the winner of this game is going to dominate every single conversation. We're all going to overreact to it and say, let's say the Bills mollywop the Chiefs. We're going to be talking about, this is the Bills' year to take down the Chiefs. We'll overreact to this game. But it essentially means nothing.
And maybe we can make the argument that what really matters here is the possibility that eventually when they play in the playoffs, they would play in Buffalo instead of Kansas City, and you still, even though that hasn't worked in the past, want to give yourself every opportunity to beat the Chiefs, and that's easier to do if it's at home than on the road. Like, I could buy that. I think this Sunday, the importance of the game is really about what's happening today, right now in this season. And the importance of this game for the Chiefs is substantial. Like, they are still, like, this is still a Kansas City Chiefs team that you see right there is 5-3, right? They don't want to fall to 5-4. The AFC is wildly difficult this year. They don't want to fall to 5-4 and find themselves a couple of games back in the hunt to try and get the top seed in the playoffs if that were to be available. They don't want to find themselves looking at the Broncos and saying, oh, man, how do we do this? Like, look at the odds right now. The Chiefs are still the favorite to win the division, but the Broncos are sitting at 6-2. You don't want to find yourself 2 games back in the hunt for the AFC West. So I think for this year, for right now, for this moment, this game is important for Kansas City because of the hole that they were dug in earlier in the season. So I do think that there's importance to it, but that would be my answer whether the Chiefs were playing the Bills this weekend or whether they were playing the Jags this weekend. It doesn't really matter to me the opponent. It's on right now Kansas City to try and win football games. So I do think this weekend there's importance for Kansas City to win.
Of course. I mean, I don't want that to sound like this game doesn't matter at all in the slightest. It just doesn't matter, in my opinion, based on the expectations of these teams. I mean, anytime you can beat an AFC opponent, that's going to be a net positive. Of course. Every time you suit up and have a game in the National Football League, it is better for you to win that game than it is to not. Of course, especially when we're looking at the standings, especially when we're looking at the setback that she's kind of suffered early in the season, falling to 0-2. I do wonder, though, let's say the Bills beat the Chiefs. Maybe let's just say in, hypothetical world, the Bills beat the Chiefs in dramatic fashion. Will that be a message to Brandon Beane and the Bills front office? They don't necessarily have to do anything at the trade deadline. Because, hey, right now we've got a roster constructed to beat the Chiefs. When I think we all know that they don't. Right now, as currently constructed, it doesn't give me a lot of hope that this Bills season will be different from previous ones.
That's a really interesting point of the outcome, especially this close to the trade deadline. Knowing that
Yeah.
they're going to come out of Sunday's game. If they walk out of Sunday's game and they feel like, man, we really need one more dynamic offensive weapon, or they come out of Sunday's game and they say, man, we really need somebody to come up into the middle of this defensive line. Like if they come out of Sunday's game and say, this is the one spot we need some help, man, they're going to have to work the phones for that 24, almost 48 hours vigorously to try and get that addressed. That's a really, really strong point on where there can be actual value in this game. Because one thing about it is, like, look, I think the game can still be appreciated, Caroline, just for being greatness. Like, I loved that we got Brady versus Manning every year in the NFL for years. I think that's a magic. And for anyone that's not fully familiar with the NFL scheduling, the way it works is you will always play every team in your conference that finished in the same spot in their division that you finished the year before. So if you were the last place team, you will play the other last place teams in the AFC. If you're the first place, you'll play the other first place teams. That's why so often we get just really crappy football games between bad teams that we have to forget about. But then it's worth it because we get this one. It's worth it because we get the best v the best. And so I think the opportunity at 4:25 in the afternoon on a Sunday to get this game is a tremendous opportunity to watch incredible football. And it's a tremendous opportunity to watch two of the best quarterbacks in the league and two MVP caliber players. And it's a tremendous opportunity to see what real meaningful football looks like. So I do think it's important to put weight on what this game is for that. I think just the chance to see what should be one of the best games that we're going to see all year between two teams that absolutely hate each other. In my mind, this has become currently the best sort of rivalry we have in the NFL because you can't get past them, because it feels like back when Jordan couldn't get over the Pistons, back when like the moment where you just had to find the best player, had to find a way to get through the best team and all of these things. Like that narrative makes this, to me, the best rivalry right now that we have in the NFL.
I mean, it's definitely up there. We can have a legitimate and serious conversation about how many Super Bowls Josh Allen could have won if Patrick Mahomes didn't exist. And that's we could have that conversation about Lamar. We could have that conversation about Joe Burrow. That Joe, Lamar, Josh Allen, all ringless. How many would they have had, without this dominance and this reign of the Kansas City Chiefs? So it's definitely a blast of a rivalry. I might even go as far as to say what's better is Eagles Chiefs, which is wild because they're, AFC. But when you face off in two Super Bowls and the Chiefs win one, Eagles win one, when you're swapping spit in Super Bowls several times over the span of, a few years, then, I mean, like, that's special. Like, that is something when you, the greatest, achievement in the NFL is on the line twice. I have to go Chiefs Eagles. But I mean, if we're talking AFC, it is absolutely 100% Chiefs Bills.
I don't know that I was ready for swap and spit in Super Bowls to be the perfect analogy for what they have done to
That's
the
what they've been doing
now.
Is, they're just
okay. I mean, it's a little gross.
Making out with each other on the Super Bowl stage.
Just feels a little bit gross. That being said, we're not going to pick. Okay, we're not going to pick this game until tomorrow. I do think, though, it is important. The one portion of this, like we talk a lot about Josh Allen's successes in the regular season and failures in the playoffs against Kansas City. The one consistent is Josh Allen plays really well against the Kansas City Chiefs. And I want us all to remember that because
in the regular season,
become so well, I mean, the production is still there in the postseason too. Right. Yeah. That's my whole point is like we sit here so often we make wins and losses and championships an individual metric. We turn around and we say, but how many Super Bowls does he won? That tweet that we started this whole segment with showing the defensive failures of the Bills against Mahomes, it speaks in part to the greatness of Mahomes. But it also reminds us that we cannot put these wins and these losses and these championships or lack thereof squarely on the shoulders of Josh Allen, because my guy has done everything he possibly can to beat the Chiefs over and over and over again. And I always say this, but I will not let Josh Allen take the blame for a loss where he had a lead with 12 seconds left. I just can't do it.
What is the biggest difference to that point? And I could be totally wrong, willing to have the conversation. Is the biggest difference between Josh Allen and Travis Kelce that Travis Kelce has Chris Jones? Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes is that Patrick Mahomes has Travis Kelce and Chris Jones and Andy Reid, and Josh Allen doesn't. That's not to take anything away from Patrick Mahomes and the greatness of Patrick Mahomes, but his supporting cast undeniably is and has been better than Josh Allen's.
No, there's no doubt about it. And that's why man, it's hard because I don't think that the Bills have wasted anything with Josh Allen. I think they put themselves in, as I say all the time, proximity to win a championship matters to me.
Yeah.
They are in that proximity. It's just, I'm sorry, like at the end of the day, there's a better coach, there's better offensive coordinator, there's better defensive coordinator, all of those things. There are some better players on the Kansas City sideline. So the only way Josh Allen wins is not only if he plays lights out, but if he plays so much better that he wills his team to a victory. That is the world we're living in. All right, we'll break down that game tomorrow. We're not going to pick it till tomorrow. That's the ultimate tease. You got to tune in tomorrow to see how the picks go for the course of that game. But we got big college football news to get into. The state of Louisiana could be changing the contracts of coaches forever. We'll tell you about it next. Y'all reporters need to start looking at who represents these people. Woodward's agent, Kelly's agent, the Texas A&M agent. They all have the same agent. This is ridiculous. Lawyers would be disbarred the way these agents act. It's time for the NCAA to put guardrails. That's tweet number 1 from Ross Dellinger, who continued to say, providing some clarity around the governor's comments. Those comments had all come from Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry, by the way. Some context. Brian Kelly and Jimbo Fisher are not represented by the same person. Kelly's represented by Trace Armstrong. Fisher is represented by Jimmy Sexton. This is part of a long conversation that Ross Dellinger was tweeting about yesterday after Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry spoke regarding the firing of Brian Kelly and what it's going to look like in the hiring process of the next LSU head coach. Before I get on my soapbox, because Caroline, you know I want to get on my soapbox, I want to set you up here. You know better than most about this program. So I want to stress that the governor was speaking at a press conference about the failings of Brian Kelly. He was speaking at a press conference about what the process will look like for hiring the next head coach, because LSU currently doesn't have a president of the university and how he'll be involved. And then he was also speaking about the fact that this $53 million buyout, as reported, is something that, because of LSU structure, is actually taxpayer money. So that's why he's involved, and that's why he's being loud about it. So I just want to give that context as we set it up. And you know this program and the state of Louisiana better than 99% of the world.
Yeah, well, I think the first reaction that a lot of people have had is, why is the governor involved in the LSU football coaching search? And to that, I would say, welcome to Louisiana, where politics are involved in, involved in everything. You go back to Huey P. Long, who was the governor of Louisiana a long, long time ago. And he was, pivotal into the construction of the LSU as a whole and the LSU football program as we know it. The state of Louisiana was urging for more dorms on campus. Huey P. Long said, no, I want to upgrade the football stadium. So what did he do? He added dorms into the football stadium. So this isn't new. Politics and football and LSU as an institution, the lines have been blurred forever, going back to the beginning of time. I believe wholeheartedly that there is not one single flagship university more important to its state than LSU is to the state of Louisiana, just so everybody kind of has that background. But what Jeff Landry is saying, it is so incredibly frustrating as somebody who is a fan of this team. I went to LSU. I'm a graduate of LSU. How he can be so blatantly wrong talking about how they have the same agent. No, they literally do not. How Jeff Landry is talking about how Scott Woodward is responsible for two of the biggest buyouts in college football history. He's responsible for Brian Kelly's. He is not responsible for Jimbo Fisher's. Yes, Scott Woodward did hire Jimbo Fisher, but he did not give him the extension that was responsible for Jimbo Fisher's massive buyout. That was Ross Bjork, the athletic director that came in after Scott Woodward. So that's just wrong and actually incorrect. And to say that is just incredibly disingenuous. I like Scott Woodward fine. I would understand if he lost his job, but I think we also have to understand some of the other hires that Scott Woodward has made at LSU. He hired Jay Johnson, who has won 2 of the last 3 national championships in baseball. He hired Kimby, who won the first ever national championship for LSU basketball, men's or women's, in its entire history. Let's not act like Scott Woodward is some abject disaster and just cherry pick facts to support your argument. And Jeff Landry is making this coaching search, which I thought was the most desirable job of all of the openings among Penn State and Florida. I thought that LSU would be the most desirable of all of them, with money and recruiting and the program itself, the brand, the fact that 3 of the last 4 head coaches have won national championships. But what Jeff Landry has done in one conference has made an absolute clown show out of this coaching search. What he has done is made the most desirable job in the country look like a circus. And all Jeff Landry has done is made LSU look dumb and silly. Going back to, remember the tiger that he brought in last year against Alabama? The knockoff Mike the Tiger that he brought into the stadium? Literally nobody wanted that. Nobody wanted that. And he made this dumb decision that made LSU look silly, and he's making this coaching search look silly. He is making a mockery of an institution and a football program that I think previously was very well respected, all in one press conference. And it is frustrating for somebody as an alumni of the university, frankly.
So Ross's tweet here, and this is again a quote from Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry. I hosted a meeting at the governor's mansion to talk about the legalities, the cost, talk about who pays for it, the buyout, and what's the effect of it. It was a meeting to discuss the legalities of the contract, because part of what the governor is stressing right now is that because of the way LSU is funded, that it is actually LSU's Louisiana taxpayers that are on the hook for $53 million, and that has him enraged. This is where, Caroline, I always look at be careful what you wish for is one thing I live by, and number 2, I live by understanding certain action aren't just actions, the precedent. And where this becomes wildly interesting to me is what you have is a state-funded school that's coming in and saying this buyout actually impacts our taxpayers. And he made it very clear that he doesn't think that the buyout structures as they currently exist are fair and equitable for anybody involved in the process except for the coach. Now, he also made it clear that they're going to make sure that future coaching hires don't have these same caveats. Now, what he means by that, we don't know yet. How involved they're going to be, we don't know yet. But what we do know is that it takes one. And he says, my role is about the fiscal effect of firing a coach under a terrible contract. I care about what the taxpayers are on the hook, and I was not happy about raising ticket prices while we were having a losing season and we were paying a coach $100 million and not getting results. All of these things are far outside the governor's lane. We agree on that. But now that the governor is involved, my question is what becomes of the precedent that is about to be set? Whether it's a precedent of not wanting coaching buyouts, whether it's a precedent of wanting coaching money tied directly to the amount of wins that they have, whether it's a precedent of eliminating some responsibility for coaching in school when they separate, whatever this looks like, now that the government is involved in the state of Louisiana, you have to ask yourself, A, what's it going to mean for whoever does eventually take this job? As Caroline said, 2 days ago, this was regarded as the best job available. If these contract constraints come in, if they are going to limit what these coaches are able to have and how these coaches are able to work, and they're not going to offer the same deal that schools like Penn State will, they simply won't get those candidates to sign those contracts, right? So what does it mean for the LSU head coaching search? And then even more importantly, what does it mean for precedent of every state school in the country that might turn around and say, you know what? I like this. LSU doesn't want to do it this way. We don't want to do it this way. We're all going to band together. We talk a lot about collusion in athletes and what it means for professional sports. What we have never seen is a sport band together and say, we're not going to do this for coaches anymore. And that is what becomes wildly interesting, because the governor is not hinting at it. He's flat out saying LSU is not interested in doing coaching contracts the way that they've been done in the past. It takes one to change precedent. It takes one to open everybody's eyes. I genuinely wonder if this becomes the line in the sand moment where a group of schools come together and say, you know what? We're going to start fighting back to coaches for what they think they should make, how they think they should be paid, and what they think they should get if they are fired. And if that's the real question here, if that's the real change here, the future of college football never looks the same as it does right now.
For sure. I see potential kind of pitches out there of incentive-based contracts. You know, if you win the national championship, we'll pay you $20 million a year. But if you go 6-6, you're going to make 2. And I think that's a fascinating structure, something that, frankly, I would not sign up for if I am, a potential candidate for one of these jobs. It might just become the norm at some point. I also do have to question if what Jeff Landry is saying, and this isn't political, this is just solely based on football where a governor is getting involved. I do wonder if what Jeff Landry is saying and what he's expressing is a shared sentiment and opinion by other decision makers and by boosters and very wealthy people whose money goes to paying these buyouts and to paying these coaches and to paying these rosters and collectives. Wouldn't be the first time if Jeff Landry expressed something that was an unpopular opinion amongst other, decision makers that be. So to your point, it would be fascinating to see if that changes the course of college football or if this sets LSU football back generations.
I mean, the quote right here, we don't need it's fine. We don't need the guardrails if big billionaires want to spend the money, no problem. But if I got to go find $53 million from the state, it's not going to be pleasant. I don't think what he's saying in principle is wrong. This is a little like the stadium argument. Everybody's like, we shouldn't pay for stadiums for billionaires. You're right. We shouldn't pay for stadiums for billionaires. But you know what? If you don't pay for a stadium for a billionaire, this city over here will. That's just the way it's always gone. And to your point, one of the difficulties of college football is not every school is a state school. So if they really if all the state schools come in and say, we're only going to do incentive-based contracts, we're not going to allow this to happen to protect the taxpayers from having to pay any of these losses. You do that. Well, number one, you're right. Lane Kiffin, there's no way he's leaving Ole Miss to go take a Mike Could contract, like an if possible contract. That ain't going to happen. But then number two, every private funded school, like if you're Vanderbilt, you can turn around and be like, hey, we don't have to answer to taxpayers. We'll just pay you the $20 million. Come on down. Like, that's what gets so wildly interesting. And that's why I think when you see the governor talking about the NCAA wanting guardrails, it's not really the NCAA he wants to have guardrails, because we all know the NCAA is essentially powerless. This is the beginning of what could become an entire national government conversation of how much regulation government takes in college football. And that just gets, Caroline, this is all wildly interesting to me. As someone that has no skin in the game either way for LSU, it's interesting because if the governor gets his way, he will have minimized the pool of candidates available for this job. And he will be setting precedent that I wonder if other state schools start to follow, if the governments start to look at, if everybody starts to look at this process. College football is different forever. We'll keep you updated on it. That you know that. Parting shot. I don't want to cut you off, Caroline. Do you have a parting shot on LSU?
I'm sad, Fitz. I went from being so hopeful. I was so happy the morning after Brian Kelly got fired. I had a refreshed and new perspective of he's gone and on to getting back to LSU football, bringing the culture of toughness back to LSU football. Now I'm like, oh no, it's a circus again. Oh no, being sabotaged from the inside.
Go Tigers. Yeah, it's always more fun when your favorite team is just good and not good at being a story. All right, it's Thursday, and that means thirst traps. That means photoshops, and that means we get to see electric energy. We'll give you a couple of games coming up next that are Thirst Trap Thursday games for you. trap. Oh, God. She still hasn't seen the movie, and it still brings me
Nope.
joy every time I do it. We're the only place in the world you can find Thirst Trap Thursdays. Let's go. Thirst. By the way, thirst, spelled that way is still part of my favorite portion of all of this. It's a thirst trap. This is where we're going to give you we're each going to give you a trap game that we've decided could be the moment. And we've gotten we're on a bit of a cold streak right now, Caroline. But you know what? It's going to turn around this week. We got a bunch right early on in the year. Little chilly right now, a little frosty. We're like the Dodgers.
Oh, but I've been so close. Do I
that's fair,
get credit for being close? If
You do.
Mississippi
You
State
get-
didn't poop in their pants last week, then they would have beaten Texas, and it would have been right.
I was rejoicing for you, and for the first half I felt good about mine, but I'm more like Mookie Betts right now. Like I don't even really like they scratch me from this segment, but they can't scratch me because that's right. But it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. We'll give you the trap game. You'll see the most incredible Photoshop in history, and then we'll explain why. So Caroline, you get the floor first, my friend. What do you have as your Thirst Trap Thursday game?
I am taking as 7.5-point underdogs. I am taking Kansas State to take down the big, bad, rambling wreck of Texas Tech. There you go. That's exactly what's going to happen. They're all one on that Texas Tech sideline is going to turn into a human tortilla. That's what it is. They're going to spontaneously combust into a tortilla.
I wish I thought of that for a Halloween costume. That is so good. Like it's just gonna come as a big old tortilla. That's electric work. That's well done, my dog. That's great.
Exact. And I do love the thumbs up that he's like, I'm a tortilla, but I'm still having fun. That is exactly the scene that you are going to see. Are they at a Taco Bell?
I mean, we're gonna stay there. Yeah, it looks like a Taco Bell. Yeah, we're gonna give that a Taco Bell. Yeah.
Well, if you'd like to say
cheesy gordita crunch. Yeah.
Yeah, huge fans on the show. But I know the Big 12 has been an absolute blast. If you're a fan of drunk football, tune in to the Big 12 because it's been an absolute blast. And look, Kansas State is playing their best football right now. Defensively, they've been locked in. They put up 40-plus points in both of 2 games. They've won 3 out of their last 4. That feels like Kansas State and their quarterback, Avery Johnson, are really kind of hitting their stride versus Texas Tech. It feels like they're cooling off a little bit. Feels like they are cooling off. I know that they just blanked Oklahoma State last week, but doing that to that team, I don't have a whole lot to take away from that. But they're only 2 weeks removed from losing to Arizona State. That Baron Morton, their starting quarterback, has been banged up. And their backup, Will Hammond, got hurt in last week's game against Oklahoma State. So not only do they have a shaky starting quarterback who I expect to be back this weekend, but probably isn't 100%, they don't have as much of a reliable backup to go to. So I think Kansas State is finding Texas Tech in a little bit of a vulnerable position while Kansas State is playing their best football of the season. This is the perfect opportunity for a trap.
I love your analysis on it, and I'm going to be 100% honest with the world. When I heard that this was the game you're going to pick, I just said, okay. Like, look, I'll say this. The Big 12, at the beginning of the year, you were big on the Big 12. And Texas Tech needs this win to stay in the playoff consideration. We hear from the College Football Playoff Committee for the first time on Tuesday. This wouldn't just be a trap game loss for them. This would be an elimination from playoff hope conversation. And you were high on the Big 12 coming in. So are you nervous that this means that BYU is basically the only Big 12 team that has a real shot at the College Football Playoff if Texas Tech loses this game, right?
I don't know. I still think a 2-loss Texas Tech team could get in, but they wouldn't control their own destiny. It would depend on what happens with Notre Dame, for example. If Notre Dame loses another game on their schedule, and I think they're out of playoff contention, and that would open up the door for another Big 12 team. So if they lose this game, not completely eliminated from contention, but they would need some help from some of these other teams that are right on the cusp.
Okay, I like that one a lot. I'm about to give you a trap game, all right? And I'm nervous.
Ooh.
I'm nervous
Give it
with
to
this
me.
one. I don't do this. You know I don't do this very often. But the trap game of the week in the NFL, to me, without question, is Jacksonville Jaguars taking on my beloved Raiders. That's right. That's right. The Jags taking on the Raiders. Whoa, what are we doing there? Liam Cohen with the ads. Liam, and friend of the show, Ashton Genty, dressed as Michael Myers right behind him, ready to just take him down. Like this is solid work. What's with the...
I can't tell if that's Ashton Genty's uniform photoshopped onto Michael Myers' body, or Michael Myers' face photoshopped onto Ashton Genty's body because they both stand the exact same way.
That is it. It works. It works way more than that hair does on Liam Cohen. I like Liam. Definitely
like
not the
it.
surfer. And like, yeah, and then Liam. Like, I like the horror movie twist here of Liam being on the phone and not realizing that the killer's right behind him. Like, that's just horror movie 101. The killer's in the house. Look behind you. This is well done. Look, I have some reasoning for this, and I rarely feel good about my beloved Raiders, as you know. But here's the thing. Coming off a bye week, okay, so you've had an extra opportunity. As we told you earlier in the show, Brock Bowers is good to go. He is healthy. He's one of a couple of players for the Raiders that are coming back. So you've had this bye week. You've had this opportunity to heal up a little bit. You've had this opportunity to figure out kind of how to get into the second half of the season, and you get Brock back, which is, I think, such a huge dynamic portion of this offense. And frankly, you got that bye week, got a little extra time to get right on the offensive line. The Raiders' offense has been an abject disaster, but it feels like this is the sort of game, especially for the Jags, who have taken off the way they've taken off this year. The Jags maybe overlook the Raiders a little bit. Maybe they feel like, hey, this is a pretty bad football team. We got this. I like the Jags to get trapped by the Raiders. Have I lost my mind?
Maybe, but okay. I'm not going to rain on your parade. I'm not going to, maybe I would nitpick this if this was not your beloved Raiders, but I'm not going to rain on your Raider party. You don't ever do this. I will give you credit for that. You don't ever pick the Raiders to do good things, to be fair. So I'm going to let you have a Raider party. Enjoy your Raider party. I will co-sign this for you. I'll be rooting for this for you.
I feel good about it. This is also Pete Carroll's first year as head coach for the Raiders. First time coming off a bye week. Chip Kelly coming off the bye week. It'd be interesting to see what adjustments, if any, they really make in this offense and how they come off the bye week. Because frankly, that's a coaching conversation in general when you're able to do this. Also, you mentioned the trade deadline earlier. Like, Jacoby Myers of the Raiders has been a huge part of the trade conversation. They lose this game, I think there's a much better chance he's traded on Monday. They win this game, I don't know that he's absolutely out. And if you're the Jags, you're sitting here at 4-3, and man, things felt really good a minute ago, and they don't feel great now. The passing game still hasn't gotten on track. You need to really be able to run the football, and that's I get it. That's what they do well. That's what Liam Cohen's done well in all of his offenses. But you have to be able to throw the football better. And this secondary for the Raiders should be gettable. I'm genuinely interested to see if Liam Cohen comes off of the run a little bit and tries to use Trevor Lawrence in the passing game more, considering the weaknesses the Raiders have in the secondary. But if that's the case, I don't really trust Trevor Lawrence in this offense in this moment yet to be in the rhythm that he needs to be in. The Jags win by running the football. I believe that, honestly, if the Raiders are able to stop the run or slow down the run, I don't think that the Jags are going to be able to throw their way to a win.
I wouldn't trust Trevor Lawrence to throw their way to a win, really, in many games on the Jags schedule. And I think we've seen the past couple of weeks, one aspect of the Jags winning formula that is maybe the most important of all of them, in back-to-back weeks of a massive loss to the Rams and then a loss to the Seahawks. Those are two games in which the Jags defense didn't force any turnovers. They've won so many of these games, maybe sometimes in fluky ways. And look, a fluky win is the same as a dominant one, but they've won some fluky games because they were able to come up with some of these wild and crazy turnovers. That's been their MO. The Jags lead the NFL in turnovers. When they can't get those turnovers, they have those same opportunities, and they don't, it's not their same formula for winning. That's not to say that I trust the Raiders to not turn the football over, but that's an element to the Jacksonville Jaguars. If the Raiders can play clean, and if the Raiders can effectively stop the run, which stopping that man is a lot easier said than done. But stopping Trevor Etienne is a lot easier said than done. But if they're able to, and you're forcing Trevor Lawrence to throw his way out of it, and you're not turning the ball over, that's a recipe for success for the Raiders.
They'll need to run away from that man, too, because Max Crosby great against the run. Should be noted, if the playoffs started today, the Jags would be the 8th seed at 4-3. Why am I mentioning that? Because the Jags are at the 8th seed at 4-3. The 8th team, they are the bottom of the AFC in winning, having a winning record. There are only 8 teams out of 14 in the entire AFC or 16, I should say, that have a winning record. So when you look at this, at 4-3, they would be the 8th seed. The Texans are right now the 9th seed at 3-4. Half of the AFC has a losing record today. That just shows you how weird the AFC is lining up to be. So, but if you're the Jags, you need to get this win because remember, one of those teams with the losing record is the Baltimore Ravens. So the Ravens are coming for you every single week, just like we'll be coming for you throughout the course of the week. Remember, World Series action is back tomorrow night. So you get one night off of the World Series. Thank the good Lord, we finally get one night where we can all get to bed at a reasonable hour. But we will be here tomorrow morning to get you caught up on everything you need to know for the series and for a huge weekend of football, NFL, college football. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Come back tomorrow, 9 a.m. for more Yahoo Sports Daily. We appreciate you guys watching.